If you don't want to make this one big mistake that's costing businesses a lot right now, listen to this.
A lot of people think that you need to do bulk educational content, and you teach the opposite of that.
I don't think people buy because you just taught them some tips. People buy because you shifted their mindset from, I don't really think I need this, to, whoa, I really need this right now. They need to seed in why this, why now, why you.
If you're going to give someone advice on how to get really clear on who they're talking to, what would you suggest? Welcome to How Do I Podcast, Anita Siek. We are so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness, where do we even begin? I think when I was looking at all the copywriters that we could have on, I obviously have known you and followed you for quite a while. But the reason that I wanted to get you in this chair, as opposed to anyone else, is because you're not just someone who loves words. You have come from a background where you've studied psychology, you've studied linguistics, you've worked as a lawyer. And so if there's anyone better poised to talk about words and also like words that get people to take action, it is you. So I'm really glad to have you with us today.
I'm so excited. It's going to be cool.
Very good. So now guys, if you haven't seen Anita's stuff before, like just jump on her page and read her post, because I feel like, we said this before we started recording, but I jump on your page, I'm like, yes, that is me. Like you are talking to my soul with your post, and you have
I am in your head.
You
in your brain noodle.
It feels like you're doing that. I love brain noodle as well. And we'll talk about that as well, because you do have these little words.
I've been told that. I'm like, I make up the most like random words, like craptacular is another word. Anyway.
And they're like, they distinctively you, right though? Yeah. And like people see your post, they see that word and they build that affinity for you, and you naturally come up with that. For other people, it may have to be something more intentional, but I think it goes such a long way to building this community that people can't wait to be a part of, which is super exciting. So to kick this whole interview off, I am going to throw a stat around that I feel like might blow your mind. It blew my mind. Before I do, let me ask you, how do you decide whether you're going to listen to a podcast or not? So you're scrolling through, you've got all these podcasts to choose from. What makes you click the button?
I would probably say two things. I'd probably say the first thing would be I'm looking for almost like a bit of a pep talk for myself sometimes. Like I usually listen to podcasts where I'm just like, I need... Apart from like the true crime ones, where that's a completely different story, obviously.
What do we need then?
That's for a different purpose. But it's like, but for usually like a love letter, pep talk that I'm needing, like a bit of inspiration and spark, and probably, obviously the title. So I'm looking at the title, I'm just like, whoa, yeah, this sounds almost too juicy to not like listen to. So yeah,
the title grabs you, which we are going to talk about how to do that in a sec. The thing that blew my mind is that 7 out of 10 people will actually read the show notes before they decide.
Wow, okay.
Which is wild. But like I am not one of those persons, or I never used to be. And now, because I have so many different podcasts, like obviously I'm consuming so much content from so many different places, I don't have enough hours in my week to consume them all. Yeah. And so title is the first thing. But if I'm like, that kind of sounds good, I do actually click on it and I do read the show notes.
It's kind of like when you go to a bookstore, right? And you open up a book, you usually read the first couple of pages or the last few pages just to get a bit of a vibe check. Yeah. You know, it's pretty much like similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's so interesting.
It is really interesting. And again, like when I talk to people, most people are like, oh no, that's not me. But some people, they're like, yeah, duh. Like, do you not do that?
TLDR. Yeah.
So anyway, so they're really important. They are something that a lot of people do consume, and they're something that we don't spend enough time on. I want to start with the title though. Okay. So if we're starting with a title, a headline, grabbing someone's attention, whether it's through a podcast, an EDM, or any other, like a hook for your socials even, what sort of things are important to make people stop that scroll?
Yeah, there's 3 things that I always say to my clients, that whenever you're like trying to think of a hook, a headline, like you said, it comes in a lot of different arenas. Obviously, you see the podcast title, that's a hook. But on an EDM, subject, headline, that's a hook. Yeah. The first tile of a carousel, that's also a hook. The first thing I would probably say that always works is like any type of hook that creates like an open loop. Our brains hate it when there is an open loop. You know what I mean? Yeah. For example, when you're watching a series like, I don't know, Game of Thrones, and at the end of the first season, you're just like, what the?
Yeah.
What's next? You know what I mean? Like, that is an open loop because you can't help. There's a terminology called Zeigarnik effect, which ultimately is the idea of just a sudden interruption. So it's like our brain cannot help but be like, okay, I need to finish this loop in order to get the information I need. So for example, it's like you've got, 3 strategies to better your conversions on your website. Just share one and then towards the end kind of be like, if you want the other two, then grab this or listen to the podcast. So that's like an open loop. So any type of hooks, podcast episodes, that's almost just like, if you don't want to make this one big mistake that's costing businesses a lot right now, listen to this. So it's like that is creating an open loop for the audience. And because we hate open loops, we want to close it. So that's number one.
Yeah.
The second type of hook that works extremely well always is an emotional hook. And as soon as I think of an emotional hook, I think of the Inside Out movie, where you have all the emotions. There, I haven't seen the new one, but it's like got anxiety in it too. But it's like, what is something that makes your audience angry? What is something that makes your audience excited, happy, sad? What is something that makes your audience feel anxious, right? So really lean into those emotions and consider, how do you want your audience to feel? Then creating a hook from that lens. So it could be something along the lines of, for example, something that makes your audience angry could be like, stop posting, 3 times a day just to get traction, focus on this instead, or something like that. So it's like leaning in on the core emotions that we have to grab our audience's attention. And usually what I find in emotional hooks, it's either a positive hook or a negative one. So it's just like, whether or not people want to gain more or avoid the pain. So for example, a positive hook, it's like, if you want an extra 3 hours back in your week, here is what you need to do. A negative hook could be, currently you're spending 10 hours a week on creating content. Here is what you should be doing instead, you know? So that is the second one.
Do you find one of them work better than the other, those positives and negatives?
Good question. I always get people being like, I don't want to be too negative, so I don't want to do a negative hook. But I would actually say negative hooks sometimes get even more traction because people want to avoid the pain. So it's almost like, if I was to tell you, this is the one big mistake that is costing people thousands of dollars when it comes to their podcast title, versus here is one thing you should consider when brainstorming your podcast title. It's very subtle, but it's like the pain of making a mistake usually is the thing that gets people to like click. But it's so different depending on your audience and depending on who you're talking to. So I would always say, like, test it, experiment it, and see what works best for your audience.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's talk about audience in a sec as well. What's the third one?
Oh, Third is like what I like to say, a bit of a wild card.
Oh, we love a wild card.
So a wild card, or a WTF, in my words, is like just something that just makes absolutely no sense. This is like that time Chris Hemsworth sent me a DM.
Oh. Yes, Chris. Hi. Welcome. Feel free. Anytime.
Tell me more. Or like, what does Chris Hemsworth and making more sales through your podcast have in common? The magazines that you see when you're checking out at the freaking Woolies and Coles like do extremely well on this, but it's like a hook that just makes absolutely no sense. There's so much contrast, and usually two things do not marry each other, but you've got that there, and you're just like, I can't help but like want to read that and want to know what happened.
Yes, me too. I'm really curious. Chris, what are we doing over here? Yeah, there's like...
Get on this podcast.
Working on it. Send those DMs. But like, they're so cool. I think that last one as well, there's so much of that open-endedness in there. There's curiosity baked in there. Like, you've actually done a couple of those in that last one as well, which is really cool. Oh, I love these. Okay, let's workshop one live. Okay. Let's do a podcast that's going to teach you how to get your dream guests on. And we're talking to like entrepreneurs, founders with it. Like, I want to get Gary Vee on the podcast. Okay. This is the episode that's going to teach you how to do that.
Yeah, okay. So I would probably lean on, I don't know, we could choose maybe an open loop one. So maybe we could lean in on, I'll ask you 2 questions. Why Gary Vee?
Oh, because he literally has changed my life. Like, the reason we're sitting in this room is because of the content I consumed of his.
Okay, and so you're trying to teach the strategies as to how you're going to get guests like that.
Yeah.
What do you feel like are the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to, I don't know, getting guests
so
like
many.
this?
Like, we get hundreds of pitches every single month for all of our clients, and like half of them now we don't even open because they haven't listened to the podcast. It's so evident in their lines. They make it very self-centered. It's all about them. And they don't make it easy for you to say yes either. So like, the things that we teach and the things that we do is like, you read this and you're like, oh yes, okay, I would like to talk about that topic. That makes sense for me. So they're probably the 3 biggest ones. Self-centered, they don't listen to the podcast, they haven't done their research, and they make it all about them.
Okay. So one idea in which you can kind of frame like a title could be a really ridiculously bold claim. So I'm making this up at the moment, but let's just say you didn't, what's someone else that you've had on the podcast that is just like the status of Gary Vee?
Oh, we've had the most incredible guests, like Dane Walker, Caleb Rolston.
Great.
Ryan
Let's
John.
use Dane Walker as an example. It's just like, I got Dane Walker on the podcast without having to X. Something that is just so traditionally, I don't know, the thing that people do without having to pitch or without having to, you know, do X, Y, and Z. And then here's exactly what we did. Yeah. So something really bold that's going to grab people's attention to what is going to be a little bit unexpected, but it's also like the thing that's just going to disrupt and challenge their thinking. Yeah. So I don't know, like maybe you could say like, I got Dane Walker on the podcast within 24 hours without even having to pitch. Here is what we did. Or like something like that.
Good episode title, by the way. Taking notes over here. Something you talk about a lot is reframing things so that you're shifting someone's belief. Now for this title, someone sees it, they're gonna be like, oh, well and good, I'm not gonna get that person on my podcast. They don't have that self-belief. Yeah. What's something that we can do to make even that person your ideal listener? Yeah. Because like, you know they can do it. They just don't have that self-confidence. What can we do to bring them on that journey?
Yeah, so the first thing that you can do is get really specific with the biggest objection they're gonna have. So for example, with that person, they might be like, oh, but I've just started my podcast, like as if Gary Vee is gonna be on my podcast. So then you can literally lean on that, or I have a small email list, like as if I'm going to get that result. So then you can be like, you can get Gary Vee on your podcast, even if this is the first time you have launched an episode, or this is the first time you're recording with a guest. So really marry their biggest objection with their desire together. So it's then almost like, oh, it's almost like Alicia's in my head. Like, how does she know that I am worried about not having a big list, or this is my first podcast episode, you know? So use your audience's language so that literally feels like it's a surveillance camera in the house and they're just like, oh my God, are you looking at me? Are you in my brain noodle right now?
Yes. Yeah. Let's go into that more because you are so good at this. And I know like you've spent years crafting this, right? If you're going to give someone advice on how to get really clear on who they're talking to, what would you suggest?
I'd probably say 3 things. I would say the first thing, if you want to get really obsessed with the audience that you are serving, you've got to get obsessed with the problem first. So it's like, what problem are you solving, and get so specific with that problem. So for example, for me, the biggest problem I'm solving for people is they're very good at what they do, but they don't know how to communicate that. So it's like, I get really obsessed with how that then shows up in their business, in their life, in how they talk in dinner parties and all of that. So that's the first thing, get really obsessed with the actual problem. Yeah. Then it's getting really obsessed with the actual person. So this is where I see a lot of people being like, yeah, my audience is everyone. Yeah. Everyone and anyone. Really. And that's where it gets so tricky for you to actually grab someone's attention, because the more specific you can get, the more people are like, wow, you are in my head. It's almost like if I was selling a freaking sponge, I just got a bunch of freaking scrub daddy. So that was the first thing that came to my head. It's like you could, yeah. So it's like, I could either be like, here are some sponges that are going to help you clean your dishes. Yeah, that's okay. Or I could be like, here are a bunch of sponges that are not only going to help you clean your dishes, but it is going to be something, it's the only sponge that you're probably going to need. It is something that's going to help you with hard surfaces, clean surfaces, and it will probably last you for 3 months. You probably just need one sponge. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like you can get so specific if you get really clear on the problem and then the person who would be using it. So problem. Yeah. Person. And then the second thing would be to really obsess over the language your audience are using. So instead of trying to get too clever with the words that you're using, and I usually find people try to get too creative with what they're trying to say. Some people are just like, oh, let me just shove in this word, like a business architect. And that's okay, but it's just like, it confuses your audience when they don't understand sometimes what is a business architect though? So it's like, you know what I mean? So you want to make sure you're using the language that your audiences are using to describe their pain point, and it's going to be clear for them. Yeah. So those are the 3 things that I feel like is going to really help someone just get really clear with who their people are. And once you've got that in mind, when you create copy, content, or video or podcast, you've got that person in your mind. I don't care if you've literally got a photo of that person. I remember when I used to write my ex-corporate boss's CEO message. I didn't even know that was part of my role title, but I wrote his CEO message. Yeah. I literally was just like, channel David. Like, what would you say? How would you think? What would you, like, you're literally channeling that person. You're like communicating and chameleoning like as to what they would say, think, and all of that. So Those are 3 things I would suggest.
And I think that goes beyond just like your copywriting and titles. Like that goes into your topics that you're choosing. It goes into everything, because when you are thinking of that, and like for this podcast now, we have some amazing people who often give feedback. And like when I'm writing questions now, they are in my mind, or even I talk to, like we have the luxury in the podcasting world, you can actually talk to them, which is amazing. It's not like this made up person. And I think, other people can do that as well.
Yeah.
Something you have touched on there with that chameleon and that like slipping into that. Yeah. Is something I'm super passionate about as well, which is having a tone of voice or an identity. Yeah. And before we could talk about that, I want to ask, with making that copy something that is in their words, do you use any tools like that? Like I remember people have recommended to me ages ago, like use Hemingway, use, what's the other one? Grammarly, like all these plugins and stuff. I know it naturally will come to you. Do you recommend any of those to your clients?
Yes, but if I'm really trying to study someone's language, I don't actually use any of those tools. I literally just ask open-ended questions. Or you could get really crafty and just study what people are like replying to on forums, or like go where your audience is talking about the pain point that they're experiencing. One of the questions I always ask my clients is like, when do you come up in conversation? Because that will say a lot about what your audiences are thinking, saying, feeling. So are they saying things just like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so frustrated because every single time I'm trying to write a piece of copy, I am just frozen. And then I go on ChatGPT and just everything that's coming out of ChatGPT is just generic. Like, how do you come up in conversation? Because the thing just beforehand is usually the words and the language that you want to like grab.
Yeah, that is so clever. So for someone, say they've got a podcast topic, say they're like, talking to mums about returning to business and the juggle and the work life, everything that we know so deeply and intrinsically well. Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. But say they're talking about that, where would they go? Like Facebook groups potentially?
I would probably say really think about, because there's so many different subtypes of like mums as well. So it's like if we're really thinking of mums in business, go towards like a community or any place where you feel like this, or a person or a creator who you feel like is the perfect epitome of the mum in business. And, the really cool thing would be if that person was able to actually send like even like a really quick 60-second questionnaire. What I usually find is people lean onto like Instagram stories and they do a poll to do research. I'm not opposed to that, but you don't exactly know who is following you. So then you get really random info from your collective pool of audience, which could be your mum, which could be your friend, which could be your ex-boss, which could be like all these different random people who is not the mum in business audience that you may want. And that is who actually matters. So it's like if you can get really specific with who you send like the 60-second question to, it could just literally be 2 questions. What's the biggest pain point you have right now? Yeah. And if you had a magic wand, what would you want? What would you wish for? And that will, and open-ended questions. You don't want to give them multiple choice. Yeah. You study their language once they return it back, and that is just gold. Like the amount of sales pages I've written for clients just based on just literally language from their clients. I always say your clients are literally the best writers. Yeah. Take their words.
Yes, genius. I love that. I love that so much. Let's shift over to tone of voice now, because this segues so perfectly into it. Is like now we really understand who we're trying to talk to. We've hooked them in. And I think that part of having that distinctive tone that makes you uniquely you, particularly with the rise of AI. Yeah. Like I opened LinkedIn the other day and I was like, you've never said words like that in your life.
Same.
Yeah. And I'm getting so fatigued reading it, and I'm just so uninterested in it. But I also think like with podcasts, there are so many podcasts and people are almost on that podcast circuit, right? Yeah. Like you have to come up with questions that are different. Yeah. Obviously that is a no-brainer. Like try and think outside the box, and we've spoken about that before on the podcast. But I also think the words that you use to deliver your message, and just like even, everything down to your brand identity and visual identity, that is so important. How do you suggest to someone to start crafting their tone of voice?
You know what, like before I dive into how does someone figure out their tone of voice, I think there is this idea block that I feel like, I don't know whether you see this with your clients, where people feel like if you have a strong personality or a voice, it's somewhat unprofessional. So it's like, and it's almost like, especially if you're a personal brand, because I want to talk about that, like you already have a personality. Yeah. You already have a voice. You're not trying to create something out of thin air. There is something in you. If you were just authentically 110% you, first of all, that would be less exhausting. And second of all, like it would just and I feel like the more weird I am, and I always say this to my clients and my students, I'm just like, y'all are all weird. Okay, because I'm a weirdo. Okay, so it's like the more you are you, the more you're going to attract the people who just gravitate towards you because of that personality and your energy, you know. And I think with what you mentioned before with AI and all of that, that is one of the key components I feel like is going to give your business and your brand a heartbeat when you can converse and talk to your clients with those unique nuances that really make you distinctively you, you know. So I think for someone who is wanting to find their brand voice, I think if you already have this brand voice, one of the most easiest way is for you to literally look or write down like whether or not it's captions, emails, or existing content that you already have, and really circle any like, I don't know, like words or phrases that you already say and do. I call it like wordisms or Anita-isms. So for example, I always use the words like heckin'. I am always like y'all. I am like, there are certain words that I just, or like without thinking, use and say. So that's one way in which you can start to create like a word bank. So like a word bank or a phrase bank that, you know, you yourself, you've created these words or these phrases. These are just things that you say very easily, like with your clients. The second element that you really got to think of, if you're really getting strategic now, so that's like a really easy way, you're just excavating the existing voice. If you're really wanting to craft a voice, we want to craft a voice that is going to grab and align your ideal audience. So you don't want to create a brand voice just because you're like, oh, I would love to have a cheeky tone of voice and I would like to, you know, be really bubbly. The amount of times I used to get people being like, I want to have just like Frank Body, you know, like Frank Body or like Go-To Skincare. Like, can you help me craft a brand voice like them? And I'm like, why would you want to do that when there is already someone else that is in the space, especially if you're in skincare, if you are in that industry, like you want to create something that is going to be radically different. You know, those people that you meet and you instantly just like get along like a house on fire. So the same thing with a brand personality. If you want to create a brand personality that's just going to be so damn sticky, you want to start with the person you want to attract and really consider almost like you're creating this personality that they can't help but be like, oh my God, that person gets me, Alicia gets me, Anita gets me. So if you're wanting to attract the mums in business who are highly ambitious and do not want to de-shimmer their ambition just because they have little humans, then you really want to channel that energy and the feeling that you want them to have, that it is possible. So then you craft a personality based on that, as opposed to, oh, I just want to be like a cheeky brand personality.
I think that's so powerful to combine all those elements together as well. And like, it sounds like a lot of work. And it is, guys. Like this is, if you are treating your podcast like a business, these are things that take time. Like you can't just throw it into ChatGPT and hope that it gives you responses and then run with that, because it's not distinctively you, and you'll feel like you're performing. Like you said at the start, like
it's exhausting.
So exhausting. And like, oh, have I put my like special words in here? Like it's not going to feel fun for you either. And I think it takes time to kind of craft your voice as well. I think even looking at Annalise's content, like her speaking coach, a lot of people, particularly women, are afraid to have a voice. And so you are such an incredible human, and you've been doing this for years, right? Like you have those little mannerisms and things that you say that are part of your brand speak as well. And I think a lot of people will be like, oh, I don't have those words. But maybe you don't currently right now with your clients because you aren't using your authentic voice. Like you aren't being authentically yourself. Maybe with your family you have some funny little things that you can pull on.
That's such a good point, because it's like, and that's why I want to start off there, because I feel like there is this idea that we have to craft this thing out of thin air. And I feel like, especially if you're a personal brand, and I feel like a lot of your listeners are probably personal brands, it's like you already have like a brand personality. Even if you don't want to write the thing, like just start talking about a topic that you are so deeply passionate about. Like record a voice note for 30 seconds and really learn and study how you talk and the words that you use. And is it short? Do you say things just like, no more this, and no more this? Like, how do you talk? You know, like there's got to be little nuances, very little unique nuances that you can pull from.
Every time I listen to a podcast, I get so excited about all the things I've heard. I can't wait to implement them in my business. And then life happens and I don't do anything with it. And I don't want this podcast to be that for you. I want you to take action and actually be able to implement these things that you're learning today. So head to the show notes or send me the word debrief over on Instagram and I'll send you all the key takeaways from today, because the difference isn't what you know, it's what you do. Let's get back into the show.
And do you think that needs to then go over into like show notes and idioms and all of those sort of places as well?
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of like when you go to a hairdresser and they usually give you a biscotti cookie, but then one time they don't give you a biscotti cookie. And you're just like, wait, what? That's inconsistent. It's the same. So it should be kind of consistent across all of your touch points, whether or not it is on the podcast, whether or not it's in the show notes, whether it's on the website or on Instagram and Reels, it should feel consistent.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people want to use AI right now. Yeah. Like it's genius to do it. Saves you so much time. It's incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
But there is that risk if you don't have this all dialed in.
Totally.
That if you do like our debrief, for example, if I just like spit our episode in, it comes out, it's kind of there, but it's got a lot of M dashes that we need to remove, which now that new release is working on that. But also there's a whole heap of stuff in there that is just words and language that I never use. And we're missing those little sprinkles of me in there too. So you do need to rewrite it. Something I love about you is you've never shied away from AI with this rise of it.
Love
you
AI.
have leaned into it. You've built FettiBot, which is the coolest thing ever. So how do you, if someone was going to try and create something that had their brand voice in it, what sort of things do you think are important to include in that prompting?
Ooh, love it. Okay, so if you're using AI to help you literally document your brand voice, like you could literally do it in the matter of like, I don't know, 5 minutes. Literally, I walked this through with my students just recently. You literally take a pool of content you've already written or transcripts. So if you're doing a lot of podcasts, like upload your transcripts. Upload transcript, get ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, Claude, to really learn certain patterns, characteristics, and the way in which you write or talk. So you could literally do a prompt that just really, outlines characteristics, your voice, your tonality, the certain topics or how you speak and create sentences. Then get it to document that into a SOP or a voice guide. So you can literally spit back out. So you will need like a pool of content. But it can literally spit back out to you like a documented voice guide that you can then turn, if you want to create a custom bot, you can literally then teach this bot, just give it back to the bot and be like, hey, can you learn this voice? That's literally it. So you literally take existing stuff, get it to document the thing, and then you upload it back to teach the bot the voice. Like that's literally all you need to do if you want to teach a bot to sound like you.
I think people overcomplicate it so much. They're like, I'm trying ChatGPT and it's not working. It keeps making like generic, stupid captions for me. It's like, but have you like done that? That is so simple.
So simple.
If you have an existing content bank. If you don't, it's going to be a little bit more work. Like use Loom, record yourself like talking and doing stuff for a couple of days.
Or what you could do, this is another hack, because one of my students was just like, I don't have like a big pool of content. I was just like, okay, well literally get ChatGPT or one of those AI platforms to interview you. So it will spit you like, 10 questions to answer. Go to the record button and just answer it as though someone's interviewing you on a podcast or whatever. Just talk. And it will still get the same type of content, right, to then create this voice bank. Because when we think of these AI tools, like they are like pattern learning machines. The more you give it like a pool of stuff to learn, it can see the patterns. It can see like what are the things that are repeated. It can see probably the strategy that's behind it. And you can then use that to feed the machine again. Instead of having to manually write the thing, like give it something or get it to ask you questions so that you can give it something.
So genius, like just leveraging it to maximize your time as well.
Totally.
So we've covered now looking at the topics, the hooks, the way that we're going to get them in. We've covered how we're going to speak to them, make them feel like we're going to be inside their head. And now we've spoken about how we're talking in the first place, like the brand identity and those sort of things. Something I love that you teach as well, which I think will maybe break some people's beliefs right now, is that if you want to be seen as the go-to, but more particularly if you want to convert people to take action, a lot of people think that you need to do bulk educational content. And you teach the opposite of that.
Look, I don't think people buy because you just taught them some tips. You know what I mean? People don't buy because you like gave them some, learnings and they learned something from you. People buy because you shifted their mindset from, I don't really think I need this, to, whoa, I really need this right now. And I always say your copy and content or your podcast episodes, like they need to seed in why this, why now, why you? Because those are the 3 questions that people are constantly asking right now before they are ready to hand over the cash, hand over the credit card to you. And the other side to that too is, I'm not saying educational content is not important. I think it is great to share your insight, share your perspective. And in the AI era right now, I think that is more important than ever. You can't just share educational content. You need to almost inject, how do you see this thing that has just happened? What is your perspective and your opinion to that? Because you can't copy that. You can't replicate that. You can't copy my background and my history and my experiences to then determine how I'm going to see that event. That's the one thing that's so hard to replicate. So I'm not saying that educational content, especially infused with your insight, is not important. However, if you want to really get people to buy, you really need to create content that's going to activate them. Activate them to be like, I need to take action right now. And one of the ways in which you can do that is what I like to call the domino belief that you need to have in your content. So what you need to create is, and ask is, what does your audience need to believe in order to confidently buy this thing that you have or take the action that you want them to take? So let's just say you've got like a podcast course and there's 4 modules. Instead of just being like, here are 3 ways in which you can, increase the reach of your podcast, you should be looking at, okay, what do people need to believe in order to actually want to buy this podcast course? Because immediately in their minds, they will be like, okay, I could just YouTube this. For them to buy this, they need to believe that this is something you cannot YouTube. So then you can create content that's just like, I have spent, 6 years learning how podcasts work. And I'm going to save you 6 years of your time by wrapping everything up into this 2-hour workshop. You know what I mean? I don't know about you, but I'm just like, I'd rather watch this 2-hour thing as opposed to trawl through YouTube to DIY it myself, So it's like, that's just one example. So like another example could be like, let's just say you cover things like titles and lighting or audio and how to create a really great podcast episode as an example in your course. Then what you should create in terms of content, let's just take that as an example. You should be like, why does it actually matter? Like for people to actually believe that they need to do a course to learn about how to create a really great podcast episode, you almost need to be like, here's the difference. A podcast episode that just does the generic, 3 tips, that blah, versus a podcast episode that follows our approach of these 4 elements. If you have actual tangible client results to actually back that up, where you can be like, here is what happened when Jess and her podcast, before they started working with us. Here is how Jess's podcast exploded after she learnt these 4 key elements to integrate into her podcast. If we can showcase that, then people are going to be like, holy crap, like I want to learn more about this podcast course. Sign me up.
Yeah. And then with those results, you're highlighting so much of that transformation. What's anything else that you would add on the back of it of like, why you specifically? Because for a lot of people, whether it's a course or a podcast episodes are probably really great examples as well, is like we're trying to convert them to take action to listen to our episodes. Yeah. This guest that I have has been on 200 other podcasts. Why mine? Or why do you need to work with me for my course? How can you build that?
Yeah, you know what? Immediately, the person that came to mind was, and I think you did a post about it recently, like is the Call Her Daddy podcast series, or just like a lot of like podcasts that sometimes I listen to. There's like a certain like energy that absolutely encapsulates you to want to listen to this person's podcast. Yeah. And I think if you can really uncover and identify what the unique edge is for this, and this will mean you might need to actually do like assess all of the other podcasts that are in the arena, and I feel like you and your team would like nail this, but like what is something that is a gap that people are really craving? So it's like, again, going back to the mums in business, like you could create another mums in business podcast, but if we got really, really specific, we could potentially weave in the element of, mum in business who wants to still build an 8-figure business or get really specific, but then also is almost like completely chaotic at home. So it's like if you've got this persona around, look at this 8-figure business owner who has an incredible business, but also she's not perfectly created at home, then you can kind of play with that idea, and you then attract potentially people who listen to that, who too are like, oh my God, like someone who is not like this perfectly curated business owner with a freaking private jet and all of this. She's driving a freaking Toyota, a Yaris. I don't know. But like just something that is just so contrasty, right? That makes it so sticky. A celebrity that does this so well is Sabrina Carpenter. Like she is the perfect fusion of sweet, but also like, goddamn, like, you know, and, you know, if you can find that beautiful contrast, if you really start to see a lot of the celebrities and the people that you follow, there's usually a bit of a contrast. For me, like I try to weave in, I used to write things people don't read as a lawyer, and now I write things people read. So it's like a little bit of like a contrast that you can add to your storyline. So yeah, like taking the time to kind of look at your story, like is there something contrasty that you can play with?
And you teach so many of your students this as well. Like you have this beautiful way of teaching all of these things as well. How would you suggest like the way that you showcase this for most people? They're not going to have like a camera crew following them around. They're going to be creating content for this purpose, right? Like they're creating content that shows you the inside of what your podcast is like. That's maybe a reel, that's like a snippet and stuff. What other content can they create to showcase what gives them their edge?
There's so many. Okay, the first one that comes to my mind is actually sharing with people your thinking process. So yes, you can do like behind the scenes. Yes, you can write down like, here is how I helped this client go from A to Z, but like doing like a voiceover or like give people an insight as to how you think. So this could be so easy. You could literally put a phone with a time lapse, and then you do a voiceover over what was actually happening and paint a very vivid picture as to what happened in that moment to really give people a bit of an insight. And that is perfect for you to inject in your personality, because I feel like with your voice, and that's why I love podcasting, people can feel your energy. Like people can also feel your energy when you're really trying to make the sale. But people can also feel your energy when you're just so deeply passionate about something. And I feel like if you could do like a voiceover, share what you're thinking, share your different processes, share the way in which you would tackle a problem, share how you would, you know, celebrate the little wins, or maybe like little things that really matter to you as a person. Like, you know, I get to, you know, head home now like at 5 or 6 p.m. to my little humans, and like just little things like that that make it so much more multidimensional. And I think that's the thing that I have said like a lot over the last few months. I feel like people don't just want one-dimensional content anymore. People want multi-dimensional content. And multi-dimensional content is depth, it's substance, it is insight, it's perspective. It is, what does Alicia think about this process, not just what is the process. Yeah.
How do you teach that with your clients as well, or your students as well, in terms of looking at what those dimensions should be? Like those, I guess if you call them like pillars, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, me, fitness, like, you know, it's still very surface level sometimes with like the pillars that people are going to be using in their content. And now we've like delved into the world of personal brand, but like you have a podcast, you have a personal brand, and this is so important for the organic growth of your podcast.
Yeah. I always say when I consider like the depth, there is your perspective / how you see this thing. So as in like it could be a trending topic. What is your perspective on this, or your insight towards it? Another layer to this is like a story around this. So I don't know if it is a current trend around how podcasts are completely exploding in 2026. It's like, what are you going to be doing? Like a storyline around that. What are you going to be doing around the fact that podcasting is going to be exploding in 2026.
And I think, guys, if you want a masterclass on this, just go follow Anita. Check out us. But then also what I love is like part of those client results, you actually share your clients as well. And they are living proof that like, even if you feel like you can't do this, these guys have done that. They've been there. They probably were in your shoes. And I think moving forward, personal brand, everyone is saying it. You need a personal brand. You need to do all of these things. But I think having that depth and dimension to it of not just talking about like repurposing news clips and those sort of things, adding your flair to it is stuff that cannot be done easily by AI. Like, and it will continue not to be. as well.
Yeah, I always say like ChatGPT and AI can write the words, but it's almost like if you really want to add the uncopyable factor, the one thing it cannot copy is the way you think. It's your perspective, it's your opinions, and it's your stories, and it's your strong stance on things. So when you can actually excavate the perspectives and weave in stories, that's the thing that can make it really different to what there is out there. Yeah.
Perfect. So tying that all up with a bow, like going back to even just that last piece of content that we were talking about then, they are pieces of content that if we go all the way back to the start and all the way back to what makes a good hook, what makes a good hook also makes a good piece of content, right? Totally. Like if you have a curiosity gap, you are creating that intrigue. If you have like long running story arcs, you're getting people to come back. Like these are all things that you absolutely won't just create a really good hook, but having open-ended loops will get people to come back and watch your content. Is there anything else that you do when you're deciding what forms the content that you post? Because you are promoting something often, like you're promoting working with you in some way, shape, or form, your incredible event, which I'm so excited for. You are promoting these things. And as podcasters, we are promoting our podcast. We're trying to get people to take action, but you don't just post about that. Because if you post about that all the time, like why is someone going to follow you? They're going to get sick of it, especially if they've like taken that action already. So how do you decide what else to post about?
Yeah, I teach my clients like there's 5 key elements that really not just attract the ideal people, but actually primes them to be ready to kind of buy the thing. So there's awareness pieces of content. Awareness pieces of content are very much like what do you do? Why is this important? Like, what exactly is this? I didn't realize I had this pain point. So awareness piece of content. Then there is the connection piece of content. Connection is all about like the heartfelt, like the gooey, like emotional stuff, like the story of how I went from X to Y, or a client stories, like something that is like connection driven or emotion driven. The third element is value, but as we've been talking about on this episode, it's not just like educational value. It could be mindset shifting content that takes someone from I don't think I need this to whoa, I really need this. So this could also be your perspective, your insight, the way in which you see this topic. So thought leadership, that's another component. The other component is culture. That's the fourth pillar. Culture is very much, how does it feel like to work with you? So what can I expect if I was to buy this course or to invest in working with your team? The final element is sell, or I call it the receipts. So show me the proof that you are actually going to be able to deliver on what you're saying, on what you're promising. So this could be not just testimonials, but really well considered and written out like case studies, like how Jess went from $5,000 per month to $50,000 per month by doing this thing. Like, and you walk them through the story to then invite them to take action. So it's like, it's not just educational content. It's not just, here's the podcast. The podcast could sit in any of those 5 pillars, actually. But it's the collective nature of all these different 5 pieces of content that not only attracts the people, nurtures them, but also gets them from middle of funnel to the bottom of funnel. And that's the thing I feel like so many people miss. Like they are so good with the top of funnel stuff, like the value add, the tips, the strategies, the really hooky elements. That's great that you've got the hook now, but it's like, what are you doing to kind of get people that's in the now middle of funnel, that's like intrigued, curious, to then the bottom of funnel to actually buy? So many people are stuck in the middle of funnel, but you're not creating any content to actually activate them to buy. And they're just stuck there. And when they don't get that, they then just either leave, go find someone else that can help them do the thing, or they just stay there for your plethora buffet of information, of learnings and tips, and they never actually buy the thing. So
thank you for this advice. Cool, I'll just go and implement it now.
More middle of funnel content and bottom of funnel.
Yeah. And I think, and all of this can apply to podcasting, right, as well. Like if you have a business or a service or something you're selling, download the debrief, get all of this information and study it because it is genius. But going back to a podcast as well, if you're talking about the receipts as an example, that could be like DMs from people being like, oh my God, I loved this episode.
Yeah, like actually having like, you could do like even like a ritual like with each episode where you actually like sprinkle this throughout the episode. A great way. And people then get excited. They're like, oh my God, she's reading my, little review
I love that so much. Do you know what? And like being completely candid, we usually have flexi intros for our podcast. And that is like, you'll see it with Life Uncut. They'll have a guest on. Yeah. They'll sit down. They'll talk about like what's going on in their life, give you a little update, maybe read out some comments and like talk about like what the community is doing as well. I love them so much and I wanted it for this podcast, but we are growing so quickly on YouTube at the moment. We've found like a whole new audience and YouTube people, you need to get to the point really quickly. And so like, and even new audiences, like nobody gives a shit about who I am and why I'm here in the chair. Like a lot of people are coming for you and like listening to you. And so finding that balance, I know one day we will incorporate them back in, but having that moment where you're like, oh yes, now this question is from, like it could be as simple as that. Like these questions are from you guys.
And so then that you add like an element of like, this is our thing. Like this is not just like this podcast I create, this is our thing. You then create community. Then you create like ongoing desire to want to listen because you actually give a crap like about what people want and what people want to like listen to.
And then really cool idea for culture, like showing those moments that usually don't get turned into reels. Because why would you clip like someone's reaction or something completely off topic? But like if that fits, if we're talking about the tone of voice, you know exactly who you are, who you're trying to talk to, what they value, what keeps them up at night. If there's a moment in your podcast that like they would be like, that's good.
It's the human side, right? Like the culture element and the connection element is like the human side to the content that we all know we are craving. With the rise of AI, even more, we are craving the thing that is gonna be like, what's happening behind the scenes? Like, tell me how you approach this. Like, that's why I feel like it's so important for us to make sure that there is like such a collective mix of this content to address all of the things that people are asking, the why this, why now, why you, and move them out of just middle of funnel and camping there forever.
We've already done two. And so before we wrap up, I feel like we need to do it for the audience. This has been such a masterclass. Let's talk about awareness, value added connection. What are 3 examples of content we could do for that for the podcast?
So connection could be almost like a vulnerable story or like a sliding door moment is one of my favorites. Like we all have sliding door moments. Take me back to that sliding door moment. So it could even be like 6 of the biggest lessons that I learned when I burnt out, or sharing with people if I had, I don't know, $10,000 to spend to reinvest into my business, here are the things that I would do and would not do differently. So like just connection, vulnerable stories. If there is something that you can excavate from that, I'd say the first thing that came to my mind was like a sliding door moment. Tell people that sliding door moment and how that sliding door moment impacts how you do things now, or the lesson that was learnt, or maybe a process that was that's now being introduced as part of your business or what you do.
Yeah, we did a piece of content the week that Caleb Ralston's episode launched. I did one that was behind the scenes and I was like, I am so fucking nervous for this podcast. I love
that. See, people would so appreciate that because it's almost like, you know, Alicia just carries herself so well. Like she's just so well put together, so organized.com, you know, but like for you to actually be like, I was so nervous, so scared. Like people be like, oh, wow, like so human. Thank you for sharing that side. You know? Okay, so we lean into the value add. One element could be using this podcast as an example. We could potentially create something that's just like, I have interviewed, I don't know, X amount of guests on this podcast so far. And here are the 3 things that is underpinning so much of what people are saying. So I don't know, maybe one of the things is like the importance of a personal brand. The second thing is like, you know, using AI to help you amplify your voice. The third thing, I don't know, I'm making all of this up.
I love it. Like, it's actually what they're saying. So, nailed it.
So it's like, the cool thing about that is you are literally, you know, helping people, you know, distill all of that. You've had like so many conversations, really cool conversations with, you know, rad ass humans. Like what are the themes that you are hearing and witnessing coming from these people's mouths, and distilling it into an episode, like a solo episode from you, where you just like, here are the things that I'm hearing that's happening in the world right now from these top creators. And here is what you should do, and you can inject in your insight and be like, here is what I would do if I was you. Noting the fact that personal brand, AI, and really nailing your messaging on your podcast is key. Here are 3 things that you really need to think about for 2026.
Love it. So good. And awareness content?
Awareness. I'll probably say maybe almost like a bit of a misconception or myth debunk. Like I feel like biggest misconceptions people have around starting a podcast is let's just start a podcast and it is, easy and let's do it. But then like they go down this like roller coaster of emotions when they don't get the listenership or the idea of, any ROI back, or they don't get an influx of inquiries and they immediately deem the podcast to be useless. And there's like some stat, and you probably know this better than I do, but it's like there's some stat around how so many podcasters go to the freaking podcast graveyard.
Oh yeah, 90%.
Right? God damn, that's a lot. I didn't know that. But it's like the amount of podcasts that go to die. So it's like you can really use that and be like, 90% of podcasts go to the podcast graveyard. This is the one thing that actually determines whether or not your podcast will, make it or not. Or here are the things you should consider before you even start a podcast or something like that. So then you start to create content that's actually going to help people be like, wow, I didn't even think that was possible with a podcast. I thought a podcast was just like you get a mic and you just share and talk to your audience. But no, like it could literally be a massive lead generation machine for your business. And that's what you could talk about on your podcast. And then CTA, please hire me and my team.
Or like going back to I love your example of the woman who is a busy mom who wants the 8-figure business, because like that podcast, right? Myths, like what you think you need to have to be this woman, and like here's the actual thing of like what you need, like this is where it is, and here's the podcast where we talk about all the other things that make it there. Like there's your CTA of go and like actually learn about this podcast, be part of this community. I really want someone to make this podcast. Please talk to us. It would be a really good podcast. We'll help you. But yeah, I think there are so many cool things that you've said there, and I could just talk to you all day. Like we've got no one else in the studio. Maybe we should, but no, let's do rapid fire questions, which are what we call them mic drop moments. We're trying to put some little like branding in here, but they are our version of rapid fire questions. Now, one answer you can't have for this question is Diary of a CEO. But what is a podcast that is regularly on your rotation, and why do you keep coming back to it?
Why can I not use that?
Because everybody says Diary of a CEO, and I want some new podcasts to listen to. The people want more podcasts, and actually, like, it is the best podcast in the world. Like, it is done so incredibly well.
He has done very well.
And we always unpack why, and it's like, it's like the TLDR. Like, I want to be great at business, but I also want to learn about biohacking, and it's all in one spot, and the questions, and here's a genius.
I'll get another podcast. I feel like even though I have a podcast, there's only like a select few podcasts that I listen to. Another podcast I really like is James Wedmore. I don't know whether you've come across James.
I've listened to him for a long time.
Yeah, like it's actually been really cool. He was one of my mentors probably from like a couple of years ago when I was just starting my digital course journey. What I really love about this current era is he's really brought in Jen, his fiance partner. I think they're getting married soon, and it's such a beautiful dynamic. And I have a business with, and I know you do as well, with my husband and all of that, and I feel like listening to podcasts with couples who are in business together, because sometimes I'm like, is it a good idea? Is it a good idea to have a business with your husband? So it's been a really beautiful energy dynamic to his podcast. Like I feel like I stopped listening, but then I'm starting to re-listen because of the beautiful dynamic exchange between both of them. They're so different, but they have so much fun. And I really, really love that. Like really love that. So yeah.
That would be a good one. I'll add that back into my rotation. I love that. What is a word that is overused?
Oh, damn.
Not the dash.
I would probably say messaging, the word messaging. I've just seen so many like people being like, oh, your messaging is so, but it's like people don't really exactly know what it is. Like, what do you mean messaging? And messaging is not copy either. So just very quickly, the way in which I see messaging is, and we've talked about this a little bit in the episode, which is it's the why. It's like the why this, the why now, and the why you. You need to be able to answer those questions, which forms your messaging, the why this, why now, why you. The copy and the content is then the output of that. So once you know why this, why now, why you, which is your messaging that underpins your copy and content, then you can be like, okay, so how can I, noting why this, best now communicate that through my copy? Or how can I now best communicate that through my podcast? So they're completely different, what messaging is and what copy is, but it's just a word that's just been like thrown around like freaking confetti everywhere. And it's just like, okay, what exactly is it and how do I excavate my messaging?
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Can I share two? Okay, because two came to my mind. So I would probably say the first thing would be make sure you make decisions based on the business that you want to have and be instead of the business that you want to maintain.
Love that.
Yeah,
that is so good.
That is like a massive post-it note on my computer because I feel like as business owners and entrepreneurs, we're often faced with so many different decisions or fork in the road moments. And the thing that I always come back to is like make the decision based on the person in the business that you want to be instead of the person in the business that you want to just band-aid and maintain. Because it's comfortable. It's comfortable to say yes to the client. It's comfortable to say yes to the thing that you've been doing forever. But it's like if you really want to create this business that's going to give you the freedom and all of that, then you've got to make different decisions. And then the second thing that came to my mind was your business is only ever going to grow to the level of challenges you're willing to face. Because I feel like we think you get to a stage of business and there are just no challenges. No, it just looks different.
Yeah.
New level, new devils. You know what I mean? Like it just looks completely different. So you've got to be really obsessed with problem solving. You've got to be obsessed with, seeing these challenges as like, I don't know about you, but I love challenges and problem solving. I'm like, oh, give me something that you feel like I can't solve. I will find a way. I will find a way. Like, I will prove you wrong. Yeah.
They are both incredible pieces of advice. I love them both. We spoke about it a little bit, particularly now, like you don't do as much done for you copy. You teach other people how to create incredible copy. But when you were doing that, and even now, what do you do to get into the character of the person you're writing for?
I usually have a client that I can think of or a student that I can think of. And I'm like, I am writing for Di right now. Like one of my clients, I'm writing for her. And I'm just visualizing her and all the things that she has said to me and has experienced and what's going on in her life. And I'm literally just, without sounding like a complete creep.com, I'm just thinking of her.
Yeah, and that is exactly why I wanted to ask you that question because it is that simple.
It is
and
that
so many people are
simple.
like, I can't write in my tone of voice that I've just come up with in this podcast and all those things. It's like, no, just like that one person.
Just be you and just think of that person. And it's like, you know how to have a conversation.
Yeah,
you know how to have a conversation. This is just now writing the thing. Treat it as though someone has just brain dumped their biggest fears and pain points and now you're just responding. It's no different to what we're doing right now. It's just we're having a conversation and that's exactly what content and marketing and copy is. It is a conversation. So continue it.
That in itself was a mic drop moment, but I am going to ask you if you were to give one last piece of advice for someone wanting to grow or start their podcast, what would it be?
I would say you've got to embrace your weird. It probably took me a while to embrace my weird, but I feel like the more I embraced my weirdness, the more I attracted our ideal clients. And like I said, I always tell my clients, you are all weird because you are in my world. And the more you can showcase that to your clients and your students or your audience, the more they will just fall in love with you even more. And AI can't be that weird, so.
I mean, if we feed enough transcripts, you can give it a good shot. Might go too far the other way though. Oh, you have given us so much gold. Guys, it will all be in the debrief, but also please tell us, how can people find you, especially if they want to work with you and be surrounded by more of this magic?
Yeah, come be friends. Find me on Instagram over at Anita Siek, ANITA SIEK. You can find me and my team at Wordfetti, WORDFETTI.